Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Leslie Hooper.
And I'm Steph Miramontes.
And today we're going to be reacting to a TED Talk by Trisha Nelson on the topic of emotional eating. That is something that we specialize in with our clients. So if you are someone who is uncertain if you're an emotional eater or not, this might be a good one for you to watch to identify that. So Steph, I'm going to go ahead and expand this here and share with you today's video.
A recent study in the British Medical Journal follows 22,000 adults on one of 14 popular diets. They found that within 1 year, participants regained all the weight they had lost. Yet, if you do a search on Amazon right now for diet books, you'll get roughly 50,000 results. This was my experience. No matter what diet I tried, of course, I'd start out strong. I'm doing it, looking good, feeling good, pants getting looser. But then after a couple weeks, things started to get hard. I mean, really hard. And at some point, the tension in my gut would become so unbearable that I would just break down and binge. And I always put the weight back on again, and then some. So the million-dollar question is, why did it get so hard? My experience is that when I would diet, all the feelings I had stuffed with excess food would come to the surface, and I didn't have the tools I needed to deal with them. That's what kept me stuck in a cycle of self-sabotage. Eating was how I coped with life. If I wanted to lose weight and keep it off, I had to develop healthier means of coping. This changed everything for me. When I adopted healthy ways of addressing my emotions and stress, my weight stabilized and my relationship with food became so much more peaceful. I'm excited to share 3 of these key ways with you. The first key was a change in my perspective. Instead of focusing on what unhealthy...
Okay, I'm just going to stop there and expand. Here we go. Thoughts?
I mean, is she a client? Is this one of our clients? No, absolutely relatable and 100% true. I think that a lot of people experience the same thing. They diet, they can stick to a diet for a period of time, see a little success, feels good. We can roll with feels good for a while because that gives us some momentum and some drive and some grit. But eventually those feelings come up to the surface. And feelings is such a weird word. It's something I think feels very conceptual, but not really tangible. People are like, what do you mean feelings? But when you really start to break it down and you understand why you eat the way you eat, what you're actually eating about, it starts to be a lot more clear. So yeah, I get it 100%.
Yeah, I think her story is incredibly relatable. I'm glad to see people talking about emotional eating more and more because it's been such a missing piece of the conversation for so long. We all have her story. We have all been super motivated. Hello, New Year's resolutioners. And by the 3rd week, as the research shows, 80% of the people who had a New Year's resolution to lose weight have already crashed and burned. And so that tells us that this really has more to do with emotions and motivation waning, and the shiny new object is no longer shiny and new. And maybe what we were attempting was too extreme and unrealistic for our current skill set, and on and on and on. So we become defeated. And I guess one thing that I just want to get your perspective on, since this is such a common scenario for all dieters, really, let's be honest, whether you're a binge eater, a yo-yo eater, compulsive overeater at times, as we all are, how do we actually get people to a point where they're able to identify and recognize, oh, I am emotional eating right now? This isn't a willpower issue. This isn't a problem with self-discipline or not having enough self-control. This really comes down to me recognizing that I'm eating because I'm feeling some type of way, and connecting those dots in and of itself is huge, I would say, early on.
It's also really difficult to do without the language and the tools. It's what I love about our program is it does offer a framework and teaches people to work with their bodies, learn their bodies' cues and signals and things like that. Because I know when I was struggling the most, I wasn't really clued in. I wasn't really tuned into why I was eating. I didn't even think about it that way. I was really focused on the food and why that was a problem or why I was a problem, but I wasn't connecting the dots that I'm having this habit, this emotional eating habit. There's something behind this behavior. I didn't think there was anything behind the behavior other than, like you said, willpower, discipline, something was controlling me, whatever. So when you start to clue in to the fact that, hey, I'm over here eating and I'm not hungry. I don't need this physically. So what's really going on? And you have to learn. You have to take a step back and figure out what is really going on. And chances are it's the same thing that was going on yesterday and the day before and the day before, because our thoughts are habits too. We think the same things, we have the same problems, and we get stuck in ruts. And so when we have the habit of overeating because we have the habit of feeling the way we feel, well, that's a good thing because now it's predictable. Now we can work on it.
Absolutely. I feel like with emotional eating, it's very difficult to break that habit until obviously you have the awareness and are able to identify what you're doing, what you're feeling, and break that habit loop. That's the only way we can actually replace a habit, is if we interrupt it. And that takes awareness and understanding. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today, is just introducing the emotional eating aspect. This is something that we focus a lot on within the program, Unstuffed. And I just want people out there to know that they're not stuck. You don't just need to try harder and have more willpower. We probably should be taking a look at your thoughts, your beliefs, what's getting you stuck, how you're feeling. And from there, reverse engineering and learning how to be uncomfortable with emotions until you're not. Until they're not so scary anymore. And I will say that was one thing that was difficult for me up front, was sitting with the discomfort of an emotion. I had never really practiced that, but it is a skill. And the only reason why it was hard was because it was unfamiliar. Once you get familiar with them, you realize it's really not a big deal. So that stuff takes time and practice, but most importantly, awareness. So anything else you want to add, Steph?
Honestly, I think it's a great intro to getting people curious. The one thing that I will add is the thing that I always add when I talk about emotional eating, and that is that I think the perception of emotional eating is the Hollywood version, the crying in your ice cream version, the I'm depressed over a breakup or some big thing. And that is because growing up, most of us only learn mad, sad, happy, and that's about it. So just know that there is a rainbow, a garden, a plethora of emotions you might be experiencing, from little teeny tiny irritations all the way to great big feelings. And the more fluent you become in that emotional language, the easier it is to identify what you're going through. So if you don't identify as an emotional eater because your thought is, well, I don't sit there and cry and then crave ice cream or something, or bonbons or whatever, you've been programmed to believe is emotional eating, I just encourage you or challenge you to notice when you're grabbing food when you don't need it, you're not hungry, you just had lunch, whatever, and just take a step back and say, like, what's going on here? Is there anything that I can recognize under the surface? How am I feeling? Do a feelings check. See what happens.
Well, and that's one thing that I was going to mention before we go, is the value of the feeling wheel, the Gottman's feeling wheel. You can Google that. I'll actually link it in the show notes as well. That's a really great resource or tool to start learning what you're feeling and being able to better connect those dots. Because once you realize what you're feeling, it almost starts to, the idea of eating kind of starts to feel ridiculous if you're feeling inadequate or rejected. When you kind of put a name to it, it's like, oh, okay, I know what this is and I know how to solve for it. Or maybe we don't. We just have to learn to be okay with it until it passes. So, well, that is it for us today. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have an experience of emotional eating that you would like to share, please leave it in the comments so we can help everybody in this community benefit from one another's own personal stories and experiences. And as always, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notifications button on your way out if you found this useful. We'll see you on the next one.